afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the June 9, 2016 meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today's meeting is being broadcast live by Winston TV digital media. It will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. Friday and again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Our first order of business today is the consent agenda. These are items of which the petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance, or items of which staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. For public hearings today, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There is no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one will be permitted to speak unless a planning board member asks a question. For general use district zoning requests, the planning board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district. Therefore, the petitioner may not refer to a specific use of the property. For special use district zoning, however, the petitioner must identify the intended use or uses and give specific details on how the site will be developed. Items under Section B of our agenda require final action by either the City Council or the County Commissioners. As such, votes taken today concerning these items or recommendations be considered by those bodies during their review. I will point out that these items on the agenda today for the City Council, there will be no meeting in July, so they will be heard City Council on August 1. If you're addressing the board today, before you give your comments, we would like your name, address, and zip code for the record. First item of business is the approval of the minutes of the May 12, 23, and 26. And I believe there's one correction, Mr. Bryan.
Yes, I wanted to add to the minutes of the work session on May 26 under the second item, Downtown Streetscape Report. I wanted to add that Mr. Bryan asked if we could include dining barriers as part of this plan, and I believe that staff said that the Downtown Partnership would be looking into this in the future.
Okay. With that one addition.
Is that accurate? With the...
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. With that one addition, is there a motion for approval?
Move for approval with the addition that Mr. Bryan made.
Motion, Mr. Morgan, second, Mr. Lamb. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Now call Mr. Roberts for our consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good afternoon. First item on your consent agenda is item B1. This is a final development plan located at the intersection of Old English and Haynes Mall Boulevard for a convenience store, property zone GBS 2-phase. The petitioner is Murphy Oil Convenience Store, and it's shown there in red. Petitioner has got circulation that goes around the building there, shown in the center in red, with one access onto Oxford Station Way. Petitioner worked with staff on trying to improve the appearance of the convenience store a little bit, consistent with some of the other buildings that have been constructed out there. They have agreed to a 4-foot decorative fence with brick columns shown in the upper left there in brown. That will go around the frontage portion there and a portion of Old English Way. They have also worked with the developers across the street, the shops at Little Creek and the lofts at Little Creek, the apartments, particularly in regard to lighting. Obviously, convenience stores can have a lot of lighting. There's a lighting condition that there be no more than half-foot candle around the perimeter, but they have also agreed to an additional lighting condition that would be in regard to the lighting directly underneath the canopy. So this is a slightly revised condition here. You'll see about 6 lines down, the new wording that we've inserted there underlined, and that's the number 5. The average foot candle reading beneath the canopy shall be 30. That doesn't probably mean a whole lot to you and me, but the 50 is their standard lighting level underneath the canopy. They were going to go to 40, and then the petitioner, the property owners and developers across Haynes Mall Boulevard asked them to go to 30, and so they have. So that's what we've added there as far as conditions. Staff recommends approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? No one has signed up to speak in opposition, so is anyone here opposed to this? Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed.
Move we recommend approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on your agenda is item B2. This is special use limited rezoning from LIS, where the only two uses are borrow site and building contractor heavy, to HBL, highway business special use. This was zoned highway business prior to 2007 when it was rezoned to LIS. Staff recommends approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Again, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Said no one, to declare the public hearing closed.
Move we recommend approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on your agenda is item B3. This is another final development plan for the ballpark property. This is a two-portion request. It includes the final development plan and also a more general conceptual master plan for the remaining PBS two-phase portion. This site is 5.3 acres in size, located there in yellow. It is currently part of the parking for the ballpark. There's about 288 spaces there that would be removed to accommodate this development. This development basically consists of three portions. The red is a one-story, 9,000 square foot retail building. The blue along First Street there is a six-story hotel building of 133 rooms. In your staff report, it said 126 rooms. The revised site plan slightly increased that. And then the brown is 313 apartment units, 5- and 6-story building apartment units that are directly adjacent to the outfield of the ballpark. In the center, there is the white 6-story parking deck that would take place there. Developers work with staff and engineering and public works staff on kind of narrowing the driveway there off of Peters Creek Parkway to make it a little bit more pedestrian friendly, widening the sidewalks there along Peters Creek Parkway and along First Street, and addressing the handicap parking space loss that would take place. So that everything on this meets ordinance requirements. This is a final development plan. Again, this will also go to City Council. So before we move on to the master plan, and we can always come back to this image, does anybody have any specific questions about the final development plan portion? I will also mention, just briefly, part of this was that before any final development plan would be approved, that the petitioners would have to provide a TIS. They have done that. Also, that they would provide a revised parking study. Obviously, these 288 parking spaces would be lost. They have done that. The city has approved the parking study. Connie James is present if you have any specific questions about that. But any questions about the final development plan?
This was just a question out of curiosity. It's a 5-story building, right?
Yes, 5 and 6.
Will there still be able to see the skyline from the ballpark or the city skyline, or will that be obscured by the height of the building?
I would have to defer to the petitioner. I'm not for sure about that. That certainly is an amenity that is currently there, but I do not know.
So, Mr. Roberts, approval of this is accepting the parking plan that's out there?
Well, the parking plan is a part of this.
Okay.
Yes.
So then we need to deal with that at this point. Then.
I would say now is a good time if you had any specific questions.
Are any pieces of the park plan on this piece of the approval?
No, the park
They're all across the street?
The park plan is connected to the master plan, and I'll go over that briefly after this. The parking study is connected to this, but it's also separate.
So is this the appropriate time to ask the questions then about that?
Yes.
About that. And the traffic study that was around this was that updated, or what year is that traffic study?
The traffic study was updated, I think, this past month, actually, as a part of this, as well as the parking study. Both of those were updated.
Okay.
Yes.
Obviously, this is replacing some parking that is in the that's very near to the park. And in looking at the parking study, it looks like Mr. Davenport is using some areas that are adjacent to the neighborhood and as on-street parking, I guess, 248. What is the overall number of spaces that are needed for this portion?
I would need to defer to Connie James. With the City DOT.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. The parking demand is 1,026 spaces.
1,026?
1,026, yes, sir.
And what, on the master plan, what does the 1,260 refer to? Is that the number that was over here?
There were several phases of development
Okay.
within there. They studied 3 different scenarios, with just this phase being constructed, phase 1A, this phase plus a grocery across the street, and then phase 1B that included the parking deck area towards the southeast corner of the site.
Okay.
And in that, each scenario, based on, when you build the parking deck, they're adding over 300 spaces. And so that shifts the dynamic of where additional parking will be needed, which in the study, they outlined where those spaces could be coming from. And in all of the scenarios, they included the on-street parking that is within walking distance, within a half-mile radius of the ballpark to the north and west of the area.
Describe what you mean by available. Because they didn't include all the parking, on-street parking within a half mile. They chose stuff, and I was assuming there was some criteria for available.
Right. On-street parking that is available means that there are no restrictions. Within this area, there are some neighborhoods and some streets that that are zoned for residential parking only, and you have to have a special pass, a sticker, to be able to park in that area legally. And so the other spaces within this zone that is available doesn't mean that they are reserved or that they can only be used for the ballpark. They're open to the general public.
Okay, and so required for the 1,026 is the 248 on street?
There are 428
Or 428, I'm
on
sorry.
street.
Yeah.
Yes. And with all phases within the last scenario, 1,274 spaces are being provided. So that means, there are about 250 spaces that weren't necessary out of that 428. So that brings down the total that's not allocated. And this assumes that, people are arriving 3 per car and that it's a sold-out game.
Correct. Is it also assuming that there are no people that are in those on-street spaces that are doing other business other than ball games?
It does not take that into account.
Yeah.
Other people could be potentially
Right.
in those
So
spaces.
eating at restaurants, using their offices
That
and
is-
things
that
like
is
that?
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That is correct.
Now, part of the count was the 200 spaces in the parking deck on 4th Street.
Yes.
And what I've understood from the newspapers, I guess I need to hear it directly, is that those spaces are under contract with whoever purchases the parking deck to continue with the ballpark.
That is correct.
Okay.
The sale of the deck includes the provision that those spaces be kept in place, I think, at least 20 years.
In the original plan for the ballpark, there was to be transportation, and part of it was going to be in trolleys, from the parking deck over to the ballpark. Has that transportation been being provided by the ballpark during this period of time?
Yes, and a lot of it depends on the game attendants, as whether they feel it would be necessary.
And what are they using to get people from the parking deck to the ballpark?
Transit.
The transit system?
Transit.
Okay. So that will continue as well in this plan?
That is a recommendation.
Okay.
In this plan.
Okay, along the way. My questions are arising from the fact that living in one of the neighborhoods that's near there, and also hearing from neighbors in the neighborhood to the south, West Salem neighborhood, that we have been experiencing people parking in those neighborhoods, not in the areas that were marked in yellow by Mr. Davenport, and then walking over to the ballpark. So I guess what I'm looking for as we look at this plan and as we look at the master plan is, are we anticipating additional pressure on these two neighborhoods, and what are we doing about it that will take some relief off? We're essentially pushing people further away from the ballpark by building on that. Not that I mind that. I mean, it's a good place to build and everything. But are we simply pushing the parking further out, or is this parking not gone further out from the original plan? And part of it is in reaction to your response. You talked about within a half-mile walk. Many of the streets within a half-mile walk are not marked for essentially residential. I guess we could approach the city about making it that with permit parking or something along those lines, but at this point, they're not clearly marked that it's only for residential.
That is correct. And so that would be a process where the neighborhood association or the residents along particular streets would have to make the request to the city, and Rod Ring, our civil engineering coordinator, would go out and investigate that, and typically there's no issue with them getting permit parking. The one caution that we always give to residents is if the zones are established, then if a person has a party or hosts dinner guests,
right,
and there are no spaces for them to park in their driveway, then that may be problematic for them down the road.
Yeah, I think the best solution for everyone is to put enough parking close to the ballpark so that you don't have this or have clearly defined paths in the midst of this. I guess I'm not totally sold on that at this point. And I know you did have another study that probably could have been provided to us that would have talked about all the work that you did in this, because it must have been considerable to try to figure this out. The other aspect of the parking is, and this actually comes with the next phase, but because this is all together, is that some of these new parking lots are actually marked temporary parking. What does that mean to you?
Well, I guess if you're looking in the study for the different phases,
Uh-huh.
A temporary lot could be designated as future development.
Yes, so if I could jump in on that. As you know, this entire PBS zone property that was zoned in 2007 was envisioned and still is envisioned as an urban mixed-use development project. It's being done in phases. It's not all being done at one time. So as it continues to develop, you're going to see additional development happen on that. I would imagine it's going to be more intense than just some of the blocks that you see on the master plan. And as those things get done and they affect these parking counts for this, they'll have to update the parking study. I know the master plan anticipates another deck over off beyond right field there.
Is that on the plan?
When the master plan, for the master plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I would suspect, as some of the development that isn't as fleshed out as much going further to the north is done, there may be other parking structures involved with that. It's too early to tell yet until we get actual plans in for it. Probably the thing that is most planned out in that master plan is the block immediately to the north where the grocery store would be, but that still has got to be fine-tuned and all that. So just keep in mind that where these places are labeled as temporary parking, that isn't going to be the ultimate development when this is built out. We're still looking toward an urban mixed-use development. We don't know exactly how much of what kind of development is going to be there, what its parking requirements are going to be, how it's going to be configured on there. But the parking studies will have to be revised as we go forward with additional pieces on this.
Yeah, it just feels somewhat disquieting to have a temporary plan in place rather than a master plan that says, well, if best things go, we're going to have this, another deck over here or something along that. And I do realize that this next phase we're looking at is, or next discussion about the master plan is somewhat unusual, but I think the intent and what I heard of the city council on this was to provide a level of scrutiny so that we didn't get surprises down the way, and to allow a time when we could get input from the various folks that were affected by it. So even though it's temporary parking, it will be required to have the same aspects of tree growth and shading and in and outs as everything else.
If a parking area is built as a parking area, it would have to meet the parking requirements.
It's going to have to meet them at that point.
If it's existing, which some of this is, then it would not.
Okay.
But if they would construct anything new as part of this, then it would.
Good point. Okay, thank you.
Paul, help me through this. Are we to hear the master plan first, or how do you want this?
Well, we listed it on the agenda first. It probably doesn't matter too much what you do with either, but let me just point out, as Mr. Bryan kind of made some reference to, the master plan is not a defined term in the UDO. This was sort of an ad hoc condition that was added to the original rezoning, that when anything beyond the ballpark was brought in, that a master plan for the entire PBS zone property would be brought in, not because it has a legal control over authorizing development. It just paints the picture of the future vision of the area. And it says that it has to be submitted, which has been done, and it also says that the approving authority is the city council. So we put it on your agenda, given that they submitted it along this final development plan. The staff has made some recommendations concerning how the master plan could be strengthened. You all can add your own recommendations, but it will go forward to the city council as the final approving authority. The thing that does have legal standing is the final development plan, and that's what authorizes the development to occur. Anything that happens subsequent to this final development plan on other blocks, regardless of what the master plan says, they will have to bring in a final development plan for both the planning board and the city council to see.
And what we envision, I apologize, and what DOT envisions right now in terms of traffic impact to the area may change, like you said, because of an intense development just to the north of this or to the east of this or whatever, could certainly impact their next phase is traffic impact studies requirements by DOT.
Right.
They could double, or they could go up 20% or 30%. At the given time the phase comes in, the development phase comes in, facts on the ground, even if they had faulty assumptions on the earlier TIS, those will be remedied or adjusted, not remedied, but adjusted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
A clarification. Then is it my understanding that as further development is brought into us, there will be an update of the master plan also brought into us? Or is this the only time we will see a master plan?
Okay. Well, the condition simply said before anything other than the ballpark was brought in, a master plan will be submitted. It doesn't say, the condition doesn't say, and it will be continuously updated through this.
That's what I'm afraid of. Yeah.
So
Traffic impact.
again, this was an ad hoc condition added
Yeah.
to the, so if it were defined in the UDO, I could tell you more, but it simply said that, and so we've got to go with the wording of the condition.
How did it work with the Sunny Knoll development, which I guess is the closest thing that's similar with a plan?
Well, that was,
Two-phase.
that had a two-phase. That was a
Right.
two-phase plan. And so each subsequent phase comes in as a final development plan.
But didn't they try to also ask for a more of a comprehensive plan in the Sunny Knoll case?
that was-
I believe they had some generalized square footages.
Yeah.
And types of development in the various pods, but it still necessitated a final development plan that came back to council.
Yeah,
Right.
certainly.
Yeah.
So we can take action on the final development plan, then hear the master plan and make a recommendation
You
on
make
that as well.
Yes,
Right.
and of
Pretty
course, your
separate.
action on the final development plan in this particular case will only be a recommendation of the council. Usually, a final development plan, you're the final approving authority. But on this particular development, the council said, we want to be the approving authority over the final development plan.
Could I just ask one more question to clarify this?
Sure.
'Cause I'm just a little bit confused. So the requirement about the dedication of parkland, it says it's a condition on the building permit.
Yes.
So if we approve the final development plan, is that a separate decision from the parkland issue? Can we separate the two, or are they combined?
Well, what we did with that condition, we were concerned when we saw this that if we just kick the can down the road in terms of, the original rezoning just simply said there will be replacement parkland that's dedicated in it. It didn't say when, didn't say in what phase or whatever. So it really hasn't been addressed. Wasn't addressed with the ballpark. It wasn't addressed with the Link Apartments. And so we got concerned that if we kept on kicking the can down the road, we might end up with the parkland being the last thing that's thought of, and it might be the leftover land that no one else wanted, instead of being deliberately planned to kind of work the best way it could for the area. So that's why we suggested as a condition for this one that the dedication happen before too many other phases came in, so we could lock down where it was going to be. Now, the proposed area for the parkland is not on this final development plan site. Obviously, it's on the master plan, but we wanted to tie it to this so that we could just go ahead and get that cleared up as opposed to letting it just kind of be kicked down the road until the final thing.
So we're requiring a formal dedication.
Yes.
Okay.
So it sounds like we need to hear from the developer then on some of that, at least I would.
On the parkland
On the
issue.
parkland.
Okay, but that's part of the master plan, that's not part of this.
Well, I thought we were just correcting
Well,
that it was part of this plan.
Well, simply
The dedication,
that the parkland would be dedicated. The condition doesn't say where it is, but it says the parkland will be dedicated.
prior to
by the time
issuance
they
of
get
building
it.
permits.
Right. So if you're concerned about the wording of the condition that simply says it needs to be dedicated, then certainly that would be a subject for now. But if you want to talk about the location of it and whether that's suitable to the city or whatever, then you could probably talk about that at the time of the master plan.
Well, I would certainly, I think what we've been presented with in terms of the parkland is woefully inadequate. And I certainly go back to those discussions with the city around keeping that park that was in West End East and trying to keep some continuity of that in the community. And what we've ended up with is parkland that seems to be walkways to parking lots and leftover bump outs and medians and things like that. And so I would certainly recommend that we add to this that the parkland be a contiguous, whatever it was it 0.5 or 0.6?
159.
0.59 acres. And I guess one of the main things I'm looking at here, and I think I'll go further in the discussion with the master plan, I am really excited about this, and I've been excited about since day one, happening, where it's happening and how it's happening and everything, and I think it's the perfect place for it. But as we look toward adding 1,000, 2,000, maybe more people to this area, I think they deserve a wonderful green space. They deserve some canopy they can look out their windows to, and different items like that. And I think there's things that the city can do to contribute to that. But I think at this stage of the plan, since it was clear from the very beginning with the developer that we shouldn't scrimp on that 0.59 acres, and that should be part of this plan. Now, where we eventually put that, I think there can be some negotiations, but let's look toward the future with this, and let's make it a great place for the people that are going to live there. So I'd like to make that as a motion, I guess, Mr. King.
You need to state that better for me then, because I don't understand.
I would make a motion that we keep the parkland that is promised in this development to be a contiguous 0.59 acres.
Okay, you want to make that part of the final development plan approval or part of the recommendations concerning the master
Recommendations
plan?
for this dedication, if I understand the language you're using in this. Is that what you understood?
It's an actual,
Well,
the dedication is just an actual conveyance. They got to go ahead and dedicate
An area.
or agree to.
The condition of approval for the final development plan
Page 8.
states, the developer shall dedicate a minimum of 0.59 acres of land within the second phase of the development to the city of Winston-Salem to be used for public parkland. The location of the dedicated parkland shall be consistent with the areas indicated on the ballpark master plan for such use. That's under prior to issuance of building permits.
So they actually need to show that to us for that to be a recommendation?
They've got to complete the dedication. They have to record the dedication.
Right.
Before they can get their building permit. Is that not
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what he just said.
Okay, so that will, okay,
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
But the location,
The location, I think the recommendation and concern and wanting it to be contiguous and all those things, I think can and should come up as part of the discussion and/or recommendation to council
and I don't know how you,
for their adoption of the master plan.
how do you record a dedication without a property description? You know,
Well, you wouldn't. In other words, that's why it's on here is what we have to have, but the actual dedication is going to be prior to the issuance of building permits when we get 2 or 3 months down the road.
Is the timing of it that by the time they get ready for building permits, the master plan will have been established enough that we'll have the specific property in the master plan, so it kind of goes backwards?
Well, the master plan and this will go forward at the same time. to
August
the city
1st,
council.
August, whatever the date was.
So city council will take whatever action they do on the master plan, and then before they get the building permits on this, they'll have to dedicate the .59 acres of land, or more if they want. So the master plan and this come to the council at the same time.
But let's play out the scenario of you as a planning board make a recommendation on the master plan that you don't want to see 5 or 6 separate parcels. The park split into 5 or 6 separate parcels. You want to see a contiguous at least 0.59 acres of park. And the city council agrees with that and makes that recommendation. Then they would have to go back and amend their master plan per whatever agreement, whatever decision is made at council, and then that is what they would, in the end, prior to getting that building permit, dedicate. If you as the planning board and the city council are okay with the 6 separate parcels, and that's what the council adopts per this condition, that's what they would dedicate prior to issuance of building permits. So all this condition is doing, it's tying the at least 0.59 acres of dedication, and it's whatever is ultimately approved on the master plan is what's going to be dedicated. So the condition, as I see it, is fine probably as written. The concern on where and how the parkland is configured should be a recommendation to council on the master
I
plan.
would agree with that. I think there are other options that could work out with that.
So again, we're back to, if you want to talk about location and configuration of parkland, I would suggest, let's talk about that in the master plan. If you're okay with this condition about the dedication, then you might be okay to go ahead and
Act on this.
act on the final development plan.
Okay.
Yep. So,
well,
I
this-
may be lost, but I think my motion still stands, but it hadn't been seconded.
Well, the staff's, I mean,
I think
the
what your
requirement's
concern is in here, it's
Yeah,
already in
you're-
here.
I think what you've required is already in here.
But it doesn't say it's contiguous, does it?
Right.
It just says.
That's correct.
It
Isn't
says
that correct?
.59.
Yeah, it says
Yeah.
consistent with the
So-
master
So-
plan. So-
Yeah, so if you wanted to go further, you could propose amending the condition to say .59 acres of contiguous land.
That's just adding that
Yeah.
word.
Yeah. Has the developer given any indication, preliminary or otherwise, of how he's going to meet that requirement, that dedication requirement? Is it
Well,
2, 3, 4?
You could ask the developer who is here, and then also I would
See,
suggest.
I don't know what the burden that places.
and
I don't know what that
Tim
burden is.
Tim Grant is also here from
Yes.
Recreation and Parks.
Okay.
And the original condition also said that the parkland would be deemed satisfactory by the Director of Recreation and Parks, too. So
Okay.
another reason why you might want to hear from Tim Grant.
Okay.
And if we could maybe just finish up with the final development plan, and then we'll
Sure.
get into the image of the master plan, and then we can
Yeah.
discuss the park location. Is that?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a public hearing. No one has signed up in opposition, so is there any opposition here to the final development plan as presented? If not, then I'll declare that portion of the public hearing closed. Does this motion, this contiguous, need to be in here or not?
If Mr. Bryan would like to make sure that it says contiguous, then this would be the place to do it.
I do want to make sure, because that's the only place that I think we have some, and I realize what we're doing is we're sending a decision over to the city council, and they will reconsider this.
I'll go ahead and second, just
Okay.
so we can get to the discussion
So,
part.
so you're making a motion to approve this with the adding of contiguous
Right.
to the condition?
To that.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
and Mr.
So
Lamb
now-
seconded
I
that.
second it now.
Now
Ready for
Now,
discussion.
but I would suggest that before you take action on this, that you hear from the developer
That's
about
our step.
what they
That's
think
our-
about that,
That's
and
right.
whether they think
We wanna
that's
hear what-
feasible
we
to
wanna
put
hear what
all.
the development burden.
And then also hear from Tim Grant concerning his
Right.
opinions on it.
Okay.
Great.
Gary, do you have a
Yes,
comment?
just very quickly, the images here, these are the building elevations proposed for the final development plan. In the upper left, you have this perspective taken from the intersection of Peters Creek Parkway and First Street, with the ballpark being in the back. The lower right would be from the outfield, looking at the proposed apartments. And the other two images, excuse me, the lower right is along Green Street there, and the other two images are taken from the outfield. Connected to the park, we do have a slightly revised condition. In addition to what you've just recently been discussing, there's one of the properties that the developer is considering dedicating to the city is on the north side of First Street. It has a building on it. It may have some groundwater and soil contamination. So you had in your agenda packet there, under prior to issuance of occupancy, that would be, the building would be removed and the contamination would be remediated. So working with the developer a little bit more, we decided to tweak that condition. What does mitigated, what does remediated mean? This puts the standard on the state as far as what their regulations are. Sometimes it may be most advantageous to remove the soil, as we had in there earlier. Sometimes it may be possible to mitigate that and keep the soil there. So this puts the standard on the state. DENR has regulations for groundwater and soil contamination. So that's this slightly revised wording, if you'll see that there under prior to occupancy permit. So I just wanted to mention that. And then the next image is the master plan.
Well,
But if you wanted to.
yeah, let's hold up here if you want to talk about
Yes.
that other issues.
Yeah, so Mr. Fitzpatrick or Mr. Stimmel, one of you want to address this parkland issue for us?
Dan Fitzpatrick, 3328 Peachtree Road, Atlanta, Georgia. I'm here to speak in favor of development. I'm development partner with Brand Partners, and we're very excited to be here. I just want to reiterate Mr. Bryan's comment that this is what we think is the continuation of an evolution of this area. I've been told that this was quite the rough area before the ballpark came. It's come a huge way. The adding of this mixed-use development, we think, is the next step to really, create the sense of community that Winston-Salem deserves here. I have a presentation if you'd like to hear the whole thing, but I think you really want to focus on the park. So what we have here, and there has been some confusion in the park, and I will say even talking with Tim Grant, I think there was some confusion about this being separate parcels. Green Street is actually closed. That's private now. So what we had intended is for this whole area that you see in yellow to be contiguous, and it will have a one-way entry where Green Street enters now, coming down this direction. This adjacent parcel may or may not participate in this closure. That was deeded to them when that road was closed. But this would be contiguous, and it would be connected with the pedestrian bridge over Green, and also connected back to the multi-use trail. So it isn't a bunch of individual parcels. And the vision for this also includes on the other side of First Street, which we were just talking about, the contaminated area, this area right here. The thinking being on game day is that you've got bus service both directions on First Street that can drop off here and here as a landing space, a point of arrival. And then you've got a linear pedestrian park through here. Canopy trees, park benches, focal point features. Had a great comment from Tim when we were discussing this. How do you know when you get to the park? And I think that we could have, maybe a fountain or statue, and you say, meet me at the fountain, meet me at the statue. And I do think this would be a great place for people and a great amenity for our residents. We think our residents will use that. These units along this side actually have stoops right here that would open to this park. It would be tremendous. The hardscape surface we envision as a urban paver hardscape. So this isn't just concrete and asphalt. It's got a mixture of pavers. There'll be some concrete sidewalks. But this roadway through here wouldn't be simply an asphalt strip. On game day, again, we could close this section down, park food trucks through here, and really create a sense of arrival to the park and a sense of connectedness to the rest of the area.
What's the acreage in that yellow area?
Including across the street is how we get to the .59.
Okay.
And the reason that the master plan had all the pieces broken up is they were adding totals of square footage to get to that number. So that, I think, was why there was some confusion about that. Are there questions about the park that you'd like
Yes,
to
I have the definition of what a park is. And I guess it's varied of
Urban park
the,
versus.
how you really decide if it's park replacing the type of park that was there before. How do you decide?
Mr.
I
Grant's
guess
parks
Grant-
expert, he can tell
yeah.
us what's
Yeah.
the
I'd like to hear
definition.
from him
There's-
of,
Just keep in mind that there can be linear parks, greenways are basically linear parks and all that. But Tim Grant is
He can tell us this meets
Is
the
the man with
definition of
the
a
plan.
park.
Yeah.
well, I'm just, because there's different uses and
Sure, I understand.
configurations, but
Good afternoon. Tim Grant, Recreation and Parks Director. Let me first say that I'm not the expert to define every park, but I will try to make an attempt. Let me go back and remind some of us what was at Watkins Street. Watkins Street was a very small park that had one non-regulation asphalt basketball court and some playground equipment. It was surrounded by kudzu. That was about it that was at Watkins Street Park. Coming in today and looking at this plan today, it is different than what I saw earlier. It does provide some contiguous property, which that is something that I think is needed. It also provides the opportunity to have a direct entrance as people come into the park, into the ballpark for games. So when you talk about an urban park, there are a number of different things you can have. I mean, you can have grass, open space grass, nothing else. You can have park benches in there. You could have waste containers. You could have artwork. You could have a combination of open space and grasses and hardscape material. So I think, this does give the opportunity to create something that's going to be very dynamic, probably something that we don't have downtown in any other location. And I would just like to see it developed and be something that everybody that passes that location every day, whether they're coming to a ball game or not, would take pride in it and want to stop there. Don't know if I answered your question, but...
Well, you did, and part of it was the mix of, is it so closely tied to the ballpark that it's only considered part of the ballpark, or is it truly a community area for everybody that's there? And you answered that part of it. That was one of my concerns.
The other thing, maybe while Tim is here, is if he could talk about, I know you and I talked a couple weeks ago about it's not that difficult for your folks to maintain a property that's right across the street from it. So that piece that's across First Street, you kind of allayed some concerns with that.
Yes, when we initially looked at the first plan, we wanted to have property that we wouldn't have to have park crews or in vegetation management, even mowing crews, making 4 stops to say that they've covered one park. And so when I first looked at it, I wanted to have something in one general location so we could make one stop. Whatever work needed to be done, it could be done either by my park crews there or repair, picking up trash, emptying waste containers or whatever, or even with vegetation management, that they could stop doing the mowing, trimming, whatever else needed to be done that would be in one general location.
Tim, your department's responsible for keeping parks clean and upkeep as well.
My department is responsible for everything except mowing, landscaping, and urban forestry. That is handled by the Department of Vegetation Management.
Okay.
We take care of everything else.
So looking at this plan as you're seeing it now, you think your department is willing to clean up after every ball game and keep that entrance to the ball field clean and operating? Because that looks like what this is really is the entrance to the ball field, but it's putting the burden right now, unless the developer is going to change that, on the city doing all of that rather than the ball field being responsible for that.
Excellent point. We would hope that we would not have the responsibility of cleaning up after a ball game. We would hope that responsibility would be back upon the ballpark staff, and we would keep it clean in between ball games. I think that's something that we would not be able to. We don't have the manpower to do that after a ball game, or even the next morning after a ball game.
Do you have any recommended language that you may want to talk about that would go with this property that would help define that for the future?
I think we can come up with language. I don't think I'm willing to come up with that language right here on this spot, but I think that's something that we could sit down with the developer and very easily come up with some language that would satisfy.
As long as they were willing to enter on the record that they were willing to do that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That may or may not be something that's appropriate for a zoning condition. It might be some other arrangement that would need to be made on that, but we'll have to talk about that.
Okay. Yes.
I'm not sure who to ask this question of, but I would like to know what the vision is for the parcel across the street.
You mean
and how it ties into the area in yellow.
to address the first conversation, with the dedication, we would want, for our benefit, an easement over the property to be able to do maintenance also. This is our front door too. So we wouldn't want to leave that. I think we can come up with a way to address that. To the second point, the parcel across the street, we see as a landing area. That, again, if you've got bus service going both directions there, that you've got a place to land. You've also got an outdoor place if we end up with restaurants on the other side that you can go to, get food in that restaurant, bring it to this park area. Some sort of a focal feature there. We didn't define it, but that center point would be a place that would create a sense of arrival and a sense of place.
Is that portion of Green Street encumbered across First Street there yet? Does that still belong to the city?
I believe it currently does, but it, in the original zoning, was set up to be closed. And we've
Okay.
had conversations about it being closed,
Okay.
as well as Brookstown Avenue across here.
We'll get to it.
It is closed on the north side of First Street.
It is now.
It is closed on the north side, but I'm talking, it is
Yes.
totally closed?
Yes, Green Street is closed from Brookstown all the way down to 421.
That you can't drive on it now?
You can drive on it, but it's closed as far as public right-of-way.
And who owns it?
The adjacent property owners.
So it is not owned by the city now?
No, that's correct.
But there are easements to the city for utilities that currently run through there.
Okay, that's
It would
clear.
have to be closed.
And could I ask one other question? On the master plan, there's a piece called Out Parcel Park that, I'm just wondering, is that part of the calculations of the
No.
.59? It's separate? Okay.
That's totally separate, and again, as Mr. Norby pointed out, beyond this corner defined by Peters Creek, First, and Green, it's very conceptual. We believe that success breeds success, and as this project is successful, that we'll be back and we will further develop the parcels across the street. But this creates a vision of what it could be, and a great mixed-use community area.
Any other questions at this time? Anyone? Then I believe I'm right, we have a motion for approval of the final development plan. Any further discussion on that?
Yeah, how about,
Okay.
the yellow does not take you up to the .59.
The yellow plus piece across, yeah, do we need to color it yellow, is that what you're
Well, I
saying?
don't know. I mean, is that? Yes. Okay, so we do need to.
We need to color that piece across the street yellow as well, then?
Yes.
Okay.
We do.
All right.
And that's going to count as contiguous, that's going to meet our requirement of,
That is contiguous.
okay.
So I'm curious, what was the difference between Out Parcel Park versus the urban plaza? Because now our urban plazas are park. Aaron, just in the terminology that was used, was there any?
That out parcel park you're talking about over on the west side
Yes.
there, that is separate and apart, and if that's beyond .59 acres, then it would be up to the city to decide whether, if it was being offered for dedication, it'd be up to the city to decide whether it wants that.
I guess it's the language, when I was first looking at this, I thought that was park, and the urban plaza was
Something else.
not park, but
Yeah, it
just
was,
the terminology.
yeah, I think it was all park, it was probably just the terminology.
Any other questions, comments? We have a motion for approval on the final development plan. Those in favor? Any opposed? And that's unanimous. Okay. Now we can talk about the master plan, right? All right.
All right. Just briefly going through the master plan, starting at the red building on the lower midsection there along Business 40, then going in a counterclockwise position. That's a 5-story office building adjacent to a parking deck on the right. And as Paul mentioned, this doesn't carry the weight of a final development plan. This is conceptual. This is long range. This is subject to change as development conditions change. Then moving over closer towards Broad Street there at the intersection of Business 40 and Broad Street, the building that's light blue, kind of T-shaped, that's a hotel. Moving up along Broad Street, you have the existing convenience store, which has been vacated for some time now. That's actually not part of it. You see, that's the aerial photograph there. It has a red roof on it. Moving up Broad Street there, closer to the park property we were just speaking of, you have a retail building there. Going along First Street there, the blue building there, that's the hotel that was just approved there in your final development plan. Across First Street is an Anchor grocery store. Pulled up to the street in urban fashion, as Paul mentioned. Really, the only condition was that this be a mixed-use urban development, and certainly that reflects that, as well as do some of the other retail buildings there along Peters Creek Parkway and 2nd Street. There is a lot of surface area parking and lack of buildings that we've noted in your staff report. Again, we would hope that when the time comes for final development plans to be approved for that portion, it would also reflect a walkable, mixed-use, more urban format than what you see there. So that's just briefly the master plan in concept, and I'll be glad to answer any questions about that.
Gary,
Yes, ma'am.
as far as walkability is concerned, I know there are a lot of sidewalks in this area, but I was wondering if it is really totally connected in terms of sidewalks. Are there any gaps that need to be filled in?
Well, we would look at those at the final development plan stage. We do have sidewalks along First Street now, but they're only 5 feet wide. The developer has agreed to a 10-foot wide section along Peters Creek Parkway and a 7-foot wide sidewalk along First Street. Certainly, we think that's a good improvement. The PB district does require wider sidewalks. This is in GMA 1. The PB district also requires on-street parking and some other urban elements. So we would hope that as this developed, the existing 5-foot sidewalks would be replaced with wider sidewalks, as well as tree islands as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but really getting into the infrastructure details, into the master plan area is something we would probably look at future final development plans.
Okay.
I certainly liked the developer's slide he had up here before, showing some of the flow and connectivity into the proposed, walkway beside the highway and connecting over to the greenway, because that's the kind of stuff I was looking for in this master plan, which either by my not being able to see it on my smartphone or whatever, I did not see in the master plan. I'm sorry, if this is indeed the master plan, it just doesn't live up to my expectations as a neighborhood person. To cover land and parking lots and not show transitions into other neighborhoods, particularly historic neighborhoods that are on both ends of it, to not more firmly represent the vision to the neighborhoods and the people of Winston-Salem about streetscape. I mean, I think we're owed that. This is a terrific project. The city's putting in a lot in this as well. So we need the vision along with this. And I'm seeing something that is lackluster, temporary, isn't inspiring in the least. And I don't want this area to turn up into a tenement, and I'm sure the development doesn't want that either. So I think we need more green space in there. We need more streetscape and things like that. The additional thing is that part of this begins to reflect on some things that have been done before. In 2000, we had the Broad Street plan, and I don't know whether is Connie still here. No. I don't blame her for going. But
she had another public meeting she had to be at
okay,
6,
but
so.
that Broad Street plan was highly debated by the various neighborhoods that were connected to it, and they were thinking of turning Broad Street. I don't know whether you have a slide of it or not. Paul, that connects in with this,
Not with-
with some traffic islands down the middle. You know, I don't believe we ever dealt with the high power lines along there, but there was, you know, all the thinking that went along with that. Then all of a sudden that gets sidetracked with Krispy Kreme, right? And so we talked about that in 2000. Here we are in 16, and it's basically been back shelf or whatever. But when I come and look at this, all of a sudden I'm seeing Brookstown closed again, even though there was considerable pushback on Brookstown, and I don't know where the decisions go. Brookstown, to those of you that don't know it, was Shallowford Road, which connected Old Salem with the Thabra neighborhoods and things like that, and has considerable historic meaning in the midst of that. And whereas there may be times that portions of it need to be closed or something along that line, the whole memory of it doesn't need to go that way, nor does it need to be put under a parking lot for that kind of a purpose. So there's still considerable community pushback on a plan that just says, okay, we're going to go ahead and do away with this without coming back to the community with the Broad Street plan and other things like that. Again, with the master plan, I would argue more vehemently here that this doesn't meet the level because it isn't talking about how the parking's eventually going to be or what kinds of decisions are going to be made along that way. Now, I know there are different phases to this, and I appreciate that, but the promise to put the parking underground or in other parking decks or something along those lines would seem to be more purposeful than simply saying, okay, we're going to cover the ground with this, and then we'll uncover the ground and come up with something else, not reassuring the surrounding neighborhoods of what's going to happen with a push out of the parking, or is the parking going to again be pushed out as we go along? We need neighborhoods to be working in tandem. We need Holly Avenue, West End, West Salem to be working in tandem with this development. They've been very supportive along the way. And I want to see a master plan that really says that to the neighborhoods, and I'm not seeing it with this right now.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I would just want to make a comment about the park. I was concerned about the park when I first looked at it, and I'm a little bit more comforted now after the explanation about it. But I do think that it really is an important part of the whole plan, and especially since the skyline view of the city is going to be gone, we need something to kind of link the park to the sense of community in the city. And that park can really do that. It can fill that role, but it's got to be very carefully and thoughtfully designed. And I think that the potential is there. I just want to see it come to fruition because it's a key aspect of how this is going to feel and look to the citizens who use it.
Mr. Stillman, are you familiar with the parking calculations on the master plan?
Not in detail, but we do have a consultant here and have a specific question.
Does it just meet, my question is, do the parking as shown on the master plan just meet the minimum requirements, or does it exceed? For the proposed uses, I know some of these uses could change, but
It exceeds both in the replacement of existing parking and in the proposed use. It exceeds the requirements.
which would lessen some of the pressure on some of these other neighborhoods that we're concerned about earlier, perhaps.
Yes.
Do you know about how many spaces?
The required spaces for the existing is 1,026 that we spoke of before, and according to the parking study, we've got 1,290. That includes the surface parking that we talked about before. And I don't have the exact numbers in the parking deck. We have 669 spaces currently shown, and it's about 450 required by code. You know, we could reduce almost a whole level of that deck and still be above code.
Okay. So you're saying even with the addition of the grocery store, you're above the amount of parking you need?
We are, it gets narrower when the grocery store is developed because we lose more spaces across the street.
Right.
So that is 1,054 spaces available versus the 1,026 required. Slightly exceeds.
And then when you build retail, again, that narrows it down.
That's actually the worst case scenario because then the last phase, the 331 car second deck comes online and it goes back up slightly.
It will go back up slightly. That wasn't just for the apartments and for the hotel?
So the way the study is broken down is 3 phases. The first phase is what we approved tonight, which is the corner, multifamily, 9,000 square feet of retail in the hotel. Second phase is across First Street, so it's the entire retail development on the other side of First Street. And then the third phase includes the office and second hotel pad.
And the other parking deck,
And the other parking deck is
Oh,
part
yeah.
of that.
which, as I understand
Yeah.
it, would be available for ballpark parking, I believe.
Correct. That does,
Yeah.
that one can cross park because of the use.
Questions, comments? I guess this is a public hearing as well on the master plan. Again, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to the recommendations as they say on the master plan? Okay, come forward and, well, come down and give us your name and address, please, sir.
My name is Mike McCatton, and I live at 150 Peters Creek Parkway, where the link is across the street. But I just have a question about the initial deck in the phase 1. Is that also going to be used for ballpark use as well, or is it just for the apartment?
It's for the 3 uses.
Okay, got it. Cool. Just wanted to clarify.
All right, thank you. Okay. Again, is anyone opposed to the recommendation on the master plan? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed. What's the wishes of the board?
I'd move that we recommend approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Younger. Discussion.
I obviously don't.
I think the only concern I've got is that 80% hardscape on the urban plaza. How much park, and that may just be my concept of what a park is with that. But
Is stormwater enter into this, Paul?
They will have to meet stormwater requirements, so they'll have to do the,
Is that possible to do with underground? Is
Oh,
that what we're thinking here, since I'm not seeing any layout above
with
ground?
with urban
or
type
running into
developments,
Business
you
40?
typically do have to do underground things.
Things like
so,
that, okay.
Yeah.
And the existing final development plan, or the proposed final development plan, which you recommended approval of, it will be accommodated by an existing underground management facility.
I just think a master plan at this stage, if it's the only one, ought to really do it out with all those things.
Any other comments? We have a motion for approval of the master plan. Those in favor? Opposed? Mr. Brown's opposed. Okay, thank you. Okay.
We're still on consent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, is this
Yeah.
consent?
Yeah.
Just a couple more items.
That's right.
Agenda item B5, this is a site plan amendment in the South Park Shopping Center on the east side of Peters Creek Parkway. The site is .89 acre in size, and the proposal is for a restaurant with a drive-through, shown there in red. This is a Zaxby's restaurant with a drive-through, and they're able to accommodate this and still meet the parking requirements for the remainder of the shopping center. Actually have quite an excess of parking spaces there, so we welcome this infill development, and site plan meets UDA requirements, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? This is a public hearing. Anyone opposed to this recommendation? Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval.
Second. Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? As unanimous. Thank you.
All right, moving to agenda item C1. This is a subdivision there in the northwest portion of Forsyth County, Growth Management Area 5. This is a Just a two-lot subdivision. It's an extension of Cotswold Street there. You can see there's an existing house. The development would extend that public street to the property line and allow for two lots, one on either side of that street, and it does meet ordinance requirements, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
This is not a public hearing. so-
Move approval. Second.
Motion by Mr. Morgan, second Mr. Lamb. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, and one more slightly smaller subdivision located in the southeastern portion of the city at the intersection of, eastern portion of the city at the intersection of Waterworks and Greensboro. This is a little bit larger, 4.21 acres. It's an extension of Hammond Street there, and this is a 9-lot subdivision. They do not meet the 1.2 minimum ratio for connectivity, but they were not able to provide a stub to the south. As you can see on the previous image, that it's all pretty much lotted out there to the southwest. There's no opportunity to stub there, and as far as having another connection back to Waterworks, there's a significant topographic change there, so they were not able to stub to the north. And otherwise, the site plan does meet UDA requirements, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Number 3299.
Number 4.
Number 4.
Yep.
That's when do area plan on consent if you want to.
Apologize.
Okay.
Move we do, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get back up there. All right, next item on your agenda is zoning docket W 3299. The petitioner is Armenia De Castro, and it's 0.7 acre located on the north side of Clemensville Road, west of Everett Road. The request is a special use limited rezoning from LB to GBL. It's located in the Growth Management Area 3, suburban neighborhoods. And this is a zoning map showing the subject property. You may remember last year, this portion came before you. It's a 0.79 acre lot. There was a little bit of a sliver to the western side that was zoned RS 9, and the remainder was LB, and that was all rezoned to kind of follow up the property line there, remove that dual zoning, all rezoned to LB. The current request is for GBL. The petitioner has removed actually several of the uses, including restaurant with and without drive-through, that is currently allowed on the property, and added some automotive uses along with some residential uses. But the main uses that the petitioner needs are automotive-related uses that are allowed in the LB district, but not in Growth Management Area 3. They're allowed in GMA 4 and 5. So that's why the petitioner needs the GB zoning. Aerial photograph showing the subject property. And it's located within the Southwest Suburban Area Plan. It's within the Clemensville Road, Everett Road Activity Center. It's right on the edge there. The area plan does recommend moderate density residential for the property directly to the west. These images are taken on site. This is looking north. This is looking across Clemensville Road. The subject property there is in the center there. You can barely see the red rezoning sign. Those two buildings are currently located on the site. Again, the uses that the petitioner needs are automobile repair and body shop, as well as storage yard. You can see a little bit of that activity actually taking place there on this side of Clemensville Road. That's a non-conforming use there. Again, all that property is zoned LB. This is looking west on Clemensville Road. The subject property is to the right. And then looking east on Clemensville Road, the subject properties to the left, there is that existing auto repair facility and shopping center there on the right. In the background to the left is a new Family Dollar location that this site abuts up to. The area plan recommends commercial use for the site and low-density residential for the property located to the west. It doesn't specify which zoning district. Area plans typically don't do that. But planning staff really feels like that this area has been well served over many, many years by the existing LB zoning. If this property was in the interior of the activity center, maybe closer to the convenience store, that might be a different scenario, but it's right on the edge, adjacent to single-family residential property. So we're a little concerned about intensifying the zoning to the GB district on this perimeter property. Again, it would increase the intensity of commercial zoning directly adjacent to the single-family area to the west. And it could establish a precedent for other LB zoning really throughout this activity center to more intense districts such as GB. I mentioned the uses earlier. The primary uses that the petitioner needs are outdoor display retail, which is car sales, paint and body shop, and motor vehicle repair and maintenance. While these three uses are allowed in the LB, they are not permitted in the suburban neighborhoods growth management area, so that's why they need to go to the more intense GB district. The petitioner has also included most of the uses allowed in the LB district, although he has eliminated some of the uses, and added 4 residential uses, and then also added the use of motor vehicle storage yard. So there's been some discussion about whether or not the petitioner could cull out some of the requested uses, but really he's already done that. He's really eliminated several of the uses that he could do now under the LB zoning and just added the bare bones uses that he really needs, the motor vehicle uses, in addition to the residential uses, which obviously staff has no problem with. So just in case we wanted to discuss, those are all the uses that he is asking for, but most all of those are already allowed in the LB district except for the motor vehicle repair and maintenance type uses. So again, we can look over those if necessary, but we feel like the petitioner has reduced the number of uses pretty reasonably. We're just concerned about going to this GB district right adjacent to single-family residential zoning. So staff's recommendation is for denial, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
But the current zoning would allow almost everything that he would be allowed with this petition, except for the
car sales, repair, paint and body,
okay,
and motor vehicle storage yard.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
How far is it from there to the closest GMA 4? Half a mile, isn't it?
Probably more than that. We can go quickly back to the legacy image. It's several miles. The light green down near Clemens in the lower left that's the GMA 4, so it's several miles.
Okay. All right. Okay, this is a public hearing. Do I have questions of staff at this time? If not, then Darrell McCormick signed up first.
Thank you to the board for your service. We'll be brief. We don't have anything nearly as complex as what we just looked at on the ballpark project. As staff said, we had worked with staff.
Excuse me, we need your address, name and address for the record, please.
Darrell McCormick, 1325 Ivy Avenue. We're basically requesting what is in the LB. He wants to do a family garage, and it's the outdoor storage, which allows him to leave cars outside overnight. He's, willing to work with the city on the setbacks and everything to be fine. We had spoken with Council Lady Light, and she felt like this added a service to the community. Don't know much about the garage across the street. It's an auto parts store, a gun store, a pawn shop. The Family Dollar doesn't show up on the map on the circle map that we've got, the yellow circle map. But that's what's behind it is the Family Dollar. And it's just not showing up on our GIS maps yet. But, so they're not really asking for, the GMA 3 overlay took this use away, and that's where they're trying to get back to.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. DeCastro, want to speak?
My name is Cirilo De Castro, and my wife is the owner of the property. I've been...
And I need your address, please.
My address is 4205 Powder Drive, Winston-Salem. And I've been running my shop down at close to Wartown for 6 years, and my dream is to have my own. And when we saw this property, we were really excited because I know that I can do what I'm doing right now to put the 4 or 6 bays nice and car maintenance garage to maintain and to help the community to not to go around and do the right job. And I hope it will be granted to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak in support of this? Anyone opposed? Yes. Sure.
Darrell McCormick. Staff had expressed concern about the neighbor to the west. I spoke with him previously. He was in full support, and I just asked him to sign a note that said such, and I've got a copy of that. But he was in full support. He felt like it was a good contribution to the neighborhood.
Thanks, sir. Okay.
Well, while you're there, can I ask you a question? Were there any other neighbors that you spoke to?
Yeah. How does this thing work?
Flip that up.
Is there a way I can Is that?
Focus it.
If we look at 2 things here. Thank you. We'll look at 2 things here. Find something to point with besides my fat finger. This is the house to the west here. This is the, done this really in the wrong order. This is the list of the adjacents that the city sends us relative to who the neighbors are, who the affected neighbors are. In speaking with Council Lady Light, she didn't feel like a community meeting was necessary if I would go and speak to the neighbors. Out of this list, 11 were back over here, completely on the other side of the area. There were really only 2 affected. That's here and here. On this list, 13 were out of towns or businesses, so they're predominantly businesses. So those were the only 2, which was Armandson here and Sturdivant, which was in this house over here across the street and to the west. And they no longer live there. The house is a rent house now. Everything that was there previously, everything's gone out of the yards. The curtains are out of the windows. There's still blinds, and there were barking dogs. I went back by a second time. I spoke to a young lady that said that she had just moved there. They were renting the house, but the dogs were loud and never stopped. So we didn't talk real long. But she said that, so the owners of the property are not there anymore. So the only property owner that I could speak to, I left letters and notices, and I guess the city sends their notices out. But Mr. Armstrong was the only one that I got to talk to with it at length, and he felt like that he could support the position.
Thank you.
And our notices went to everyone in green, everybody that was in the green area.
Everybody in that green got a letter.
They got a letter.
Yeah,
Right.
they got a letter from us.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Did you get any, you didn't have any responses from?
We didn't hear anything.
Did you see that?
We got a letter.
Yes,
from
there
the
was an
community.
email that received today from
New South
Neighborhood Neighborhood Coalition.
From Ms. Highsmith.
I don't know, I ever finished closing the public hearing. I asked anyone opposed to this, and I see no one now. I'll make sure the public hearing is now closed, and now we can go into work session. So what's the wishes of the board?
I think what I'm struggling with is the GMA3 aspect of it, and if the issue is that it's in GMA3, but actually the use, we have support from the neighbor that would be affected by it, that I think this is a case where I tend to look at the actual use and the conditions at the site rather than just a precedent that might be set or a broader aspect of it, that we've got a petition for something that, to me, seems to fit within the immediate neighbors and the activities of what's going on there.
And he is asking for all GEB, he's just asking for a particular
Correct.
use. So, yeah.
Well, I guess I kind of look at it from the opposite perspective. I'm very concerned about putting GB close to RS, or right next to it, basically, and the precedent that sets for the whole area, and also not just for this area, but for the city. This is a concern that I've seen people raise. I mean, in the area plans, people are concerned about this kind of intense development so close to residential. And I think that was one of the motivations for trying to do a neighborhood business zoning district so that it was more friendly to the residential areas. And this kind of use is the kind of use that people cite over and over again is not really fitting in well with residential. So I just feel like I'm in agreement with the recommendation of the staff here.
I certainly want to acknowledge that New South Coalition writing a letter and talking about this in opposition to it. However, I don't see traffic as being the issue here. I do see that DOT may have to widen Clemensville Road at some point and other things like that. I do see other options for car repair. When you go down toward Griffin Road, you've got a very industrial area. There are several car places there. Used to be a boat repair place, interior places. So there are places that are near for that. I don't know whether it entered into the staff's decision on this, but this seems, this intersection has the potential of serving a lot of those south neighborhoods. There are a lot of people that have moved into those southern neighborhoods now, and I think basically they're going to Davidson County to get their restaurants and some of their services as they cut through Fraternity Church down to 150 and that way. I would certainly like to see the city be very supportive of restaurants and other retail in this area that would serve those neighborhoods as well. There's a business there that's in disrepair, terrible disrepair. I probably should report to inspections. But I'm trying to figure out how this is going to help. Is there a way to redivide this lot and have two lots there so you're going down in zoning some way, Paul, from where it is? I feel a little bit misled in them bringing in something. We say, okay, we're going to take the residential, we're going to put it with this, and then turning around a couple of months later and saying we're going to go to even more intensive or commercial use.
Well, this is an L zoning, so the only thing you could do within the context of this zoning would be to see if the petitioner was willing to have a setback from that western property line that no activities or the storage yard kind of activity would happen within whatever that setback was. But that's about the only thing you could do with it.
Would that have to be special use to do that?
Well, this is special. It's
it is.
Special use limited, GBL.
So they could put that on this.
So you can deal with it with conditions. You just can't deal with it with a site plan because this isn't the kind of special use zoning that has a site plan.
Kind of use what? What did you say?
This GBL, so it's limited special use that does not involve a site plan.
Yeah.
You can only deal with issues by limiting the uses or by conditions.
Right.
And you'd have to make the condition fairly simple, such as a setback from that western property line.
Well, what are the setback requirements for GB to the residential?
Zero. Well, zero, but whenever you're adjacent to residential, it's 40 feet, correct?
Building is 40 feet, but the parking can be up to 15 feet from the property line. They've got to have a minimum of a 15-foot type 3 buffer yard.
Okay.
Then they can start parking there.
So So this couldn't be sent back and then brought back in with a site plan?
Well, sure, if the petitioner was willing to do that. Of course, you'd have the expense of preparing a site plan there, or you could deal with it by way of a condition, a recommended condition, or you could vote it up or down.
Right. So, I mean, I think it needs something to buffer it, and I thought in our previous zoning, we had come to a level of comfort with that, and so I was a little bit surprised with this. And I know there may have been some misunderstandings in it. It was difficult for me to understand what was happening here. But the property owner on that side may not be the property owner forever, and this property owner may not be the property owner forever. So if there was something a little bit more specific that could control this, I would have a better comfort level, I guess, with it. I just don't know what type of language to put in there in terms of maybe setback and buffer, or if we could keep the 40 feet all the way around it for all uses, along with some kind of buffer.
Well, it's LB on three sides and a street on the
Yeah,
other.
which doesn't matter on that side, but on the residential side.
But on the west,
Yeah.
you're talking about only on the west.
Only on the west.
Okay, right now,
I'm
what it's got
assuming,
is 40 feet setback for building, 15 feet for cars, and a type 3 buffer. Is that what we got on the west side?
Yes.
Okay.
And I do want to make, I did hear a question or a concern raised about kind of the, I don't want to say bait and switch, but that's kind of what it sounded like. Mr. DeCastro himself is not the person that got the property rezoned a year or so ago. He purchased the property thinking he could put a garage here, not understanding the GMA 3 limit, or 4 and 5 versus 1, 2, and 3 limitation. So
Well,
Mr.
he's a
DeCastro
garage.
himself did not rezone the
And
property.
he
He
sees the
purchased it.
garage across the street and assumes that
Right.
it's going to be, right.
Right.
Right, exactly.
I just want to make sure folks understood that he wasn't the person that got the property rezoned.
Just clarification, we got a type 3 buffer on the residential side, the west side.
Correct.
We got a 15-foot setback for cars, and we got a 40-foot setback for building, if you wanted to go with any additional building. I move approval.
Got a question. I'll second.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with everybody here. I mean, I'm all for this or whatever, because let me tell you, anything he does, this property is an improvement. I mean, it's evident, and I know this area real well, and and I know all of you've seen it, but I mean, I'm sure that he's going to go in and, make this a lot nicer than it is now, and so that's the reason I'm second, because I feel like that this, with what he's going to do here, I don't think it's going to hurt a thing. I think he's going to make it real nice, and it is going to be a benefit to the neighborhood. And like I say, you look at the surrounding area, and then him coming in doing this, I think it's fine. So I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Which way did you vote?
I'm opposed.
You opposed, okay, so passes 5-3. Okay.
Okay. So now we move to item 6, which is the public hearing on the Rural Hall Area Plan, and Walter Farabee will do the presentation.
Okay, good afternoon. Switched on. Okay. Rural Hall Area Plan update. The draft you all have received is an update to the 2011 Rural Hall Plan. Boundaries for the area: to the north is the county line. To the west is Tobaccoville and US 52. To the south is the eastern leg of the Northern Beltway. And to the east, it is Buffalo Creek, which runs parallel to Germantown Road. Growth management areas in our planning areas, largely rural, which is GMA 5. And to the west, we have some GMA 4 future growth areas and a good bit of suburban neighborhoods. GMA 3. The only GMA 1 town center we have is in the downtown Rural Hall area. During the planning process, we had wonderful participation. A number of citizens came out and great assistance from the town staff and the town council. The existing land use for the Rural Hall planning area, you see a good bit of white, which is undeveloped land, as well as agricultural land in green. We have considerable bit of industrial, which kind of trails US 52 and a number of business parks, as well as can be found in downtown area. A number of residential neighborhoods in yellow are scattered throughout. And then you'll find a concentration of commercial uses along the major activity nodes on University, Bethania Rural Hall Road, as well as in the downtown area. Once again, we bring your attention to the growth management areas. We took the GMAs into consideration when planning our proposed land use, given some of the very rural nature of a good bit of the planning area. In the proposed land use, you see the light yellow, which is large lot in the northern and central regions. We recommended large lot because it is very rural. And then we have a good bit of bright yellow for the single-family residential, in hopes of expanding some of the existing suburban subdivisions which are in those areas there. We have a good bit of purple for the industrial, filling in some of the undeveloped sites within the business parks there, as well as on some adjacent land near those areas. And then concentrating our commercial and mixed use in the three major areas, once again, Bethania Rural Hall Road, University, and in the downtown area. There are two activity centers in Rural Hall planning area. The first one being the US 52 Bethania Rural Hall Road Activity Center. We have two shopping centers and a number of commercial and related uses there. You'll see there's a good bit of parking, a sea of parking somewhat there. And so in the plan, we have some conceptual drawings of how in the future development could be at this activity center, bringing some buildings you see in orange up to the street, adding some pedestrian accommodations, some walkways and outdoor areas, as well as landscaping in the parking lots. Future development here may not look exactly like this, but hopefully it would. The other activity center we have is the Downtown Rural Hall Activity Center. To the east, you have the historic Rural Hall downtown, which is very charming. And to the east of there, across the railroad lines, you have a shopping center, which is kind of an extension of downtown. It has a large parking lot, which isn't in the best condition. So once again, we have some conceptual drawings of how future development could be here. Some new buildings in the parking areas and brought up to the street, some outdoor space, landscaping, and a better flow of, in the parking lot. And then also the opportunity that future development could mirror the architectural styles of the Rural Hall Depot and the downtown Rural Hall, as you see here in this conceptual drawing. Proposed transportation improvements. Transportation was very important in this area. One of the more important, well, more impending projects being the new interchange at US 52 and Bethania Rural Hall Road, as well as that in anticipation of the Northern Beltway eastern leg, which will be coming along the southern boundary of the area. Other major improvements transportation-wise in the area include the Forum Parkway connector to connect Forum Parkway, which is industrial, with University, as well as some improvements to NC 65. There are a few community facilities in the area, the elementary school and the Covington Memorial Park, which is the larger park, and then a small Playmore Park. We have recommended one new park, which is on a parcel of land owned by the town just west of Covington Park for future recreational activities and services. There are 3 greenways in the area. The Grassy Fork Greenway, which extends south from Covington Memorial Park, and Forum Trail Greenway, and then the Railroad Park Greenway, which was recommended in the last plan. And lastly, Rural Hall has a number of historical resources. The Rural Hall Depot, some historic buildings in the downtown, and a number of historic properties, residential properties throughout. So our recommendations there are to further preserve these areas and recognize them in the future so they can be saved for future generations. And that ends the presentation. Are there any questions?
Question?
Yeah. I wanted to ask about the two greenways. You mentioned the Grassy Fork and Forum Park.
Yes.
Where do they end up? I mean, you didn't see the terminus of them on the map that you showed. So.
The Grassy Fork starts at Covington Memorial and ends down, I think, just below US 52 or at 52. So it's a much longer park. And then the Forum Trail extends, it's a shorter one from Forum Parkway.
It's basically a rail trail, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just for that part of the rail is abandoned.
Any other questions of staff? This is a public hearing. No one signed up. Does anyone here like to speak in support of this? Anyone like to speak in opposition? I declare the public hearing closed.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Good job, Walt. Appreciate it. Okay, staff report?
Okay, I'll make this real quick. First, a question to you. When did you all receive your mail packet for this meeting? Good. I've heard two who got theirs on Tuesday. Anyone get theirs sooner than Tuesday? Tuesday?
I got my email on Friday.
Tuesday.
Okay. Okay, well,
Yeah.
let me explain what we try to do and what we found out yesterday actually happened on this. What we work very hard to get the information together for the book. We take it down to the print shop, which is actually a contracted operation, not run by city employees, contracted operation. They print the books and then mail them out, get them in the U.S. mail on Friday afternoons. That is the standard, that's the expectation, and all that. When I heard that a couple of you all didn't get your books till Tuesday, I had done some checking and was told, yes, we got it out on Friday. We did some further checking, and we understand from the mailroom that actually they didn't actually get it in the mail until Saturday. So I guess there is a post office at Haynes Mall that's open on Saturday there, but most of them are closed. So that might explain why you didn't get it before Tuesday. When we discovered that yesterday, I had a pretty serious talk with the IS department, Information Services Department that oversees that contract, and I let them know how critically important it is to get it in the mail on Friday afternoon so that you all have the best chance of getting it hopefully Saturday, but no later than Monday. So I just want to apologize for that. We thought it had been sent out on Friday, but we found out yesterday it hadn't. So I think we have made it very clear what the expectation is. And so what I would like to know going forward in the future is how is the delivery working? When are you getting them? Because if we continue to have problems, we're going to have to do something else. In the meantime, I just want to remind everyone that Friday afternoon, we do post the entire book on our website, and we also send an email out saying that it is available. So please, if you're anxious about wanting to see what's in there, please take a look at it online. If you really are nervous whether you're going to get it or not, and you want to get it for the weekend and you're afraid you may not, let us know. We'll have them print out an extra book, and you can pick it up on Friday afternoon if you want. But we'll make every effort to get it in the U.S. Post Office, understanding that we don't control that. We're relying on them to do it. But I think they've got the message now. So. Next thing I just want to mention, we had the Community Appearance Commission Awards yesterday. It was best attendance we've had ever. It was over 100 people who came. And Alan and Melinda were there. We had an excellent speaker, and she talked about placemaking. And the awards ceremony was very nice, and Catherine Laughlin was our speaker, and internationally acclaimed and all that. So despite some technical difficulties with the slides, it worked out. I don't know if Melinda or Alan, you want to add anything?
It was an outstanding presentation, and she did a really good job of connecting not only aesthetics, but also openness and social offerings and how that leads to connectedness in the community, place matters. But then how that also leads to local economic development. So I thought she did a wonderful job, and she was pretty entertaining as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she made the point that what we might think of as amenities are not just like icing on the cake. They really are absolutely critical for economic development and keeping young people here in the community. So that was a very good point.
Yeah.
And we had our first Public Art Commission meeting this past week on Tuesday, so got off to a good start. We had, as you all have experienced, we had Al Andrews from the City Attorney's Office give them a little education on ethics, and they talked about rules of procedure and elected a chair and vice chair, so they're going to be off and running pretty soon on that. And then quick preview of work session. We're going to have a pretty full work session in a couple weeks. One is we're going to have the farmland preservation plan that's been worked on for about a year with the Extension Services consultant, somebody named Glenn Simmons. So he'll be coming to present that. You got the urban food presentation from Byron Brown last time. You'll see the report. Well, since you've already had the presentation, we'll try to keep that as short as possible, but it will have the report and the recommendations. We'll have a report on future growth indicators, have a report on new uses. All these were in the work program, and so we're trying to circle in and get those done by the end of the fiscal year. And then we will have we'll be able to hand out to you the proposed 2016-17 work program for you all to take a look at as well. So pretty full agenda, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And that's all we have for staff report.
Okay. We do have to go, we're going into closed session, but is there anything for the good of the order before we do that? Mr. Lamb, would you care to make a motion for us?
I move that our planning board move to closed session pursuant to GS 168-168 and GS 143-318.11A1 and A6 regarding a confidential personal matter, the annual evaluation of the Director of Planning. Because there's no further business to be conducted at the closed session, this meeting will be adjourned upon the conclusion of the closed session.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Is there a second? Second, Mr. Mulligan. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. So we're moving into closed session.
And we'll have the closed session in the conference room right around the corner there like we did last year.
Okay. Cool.